Welcome, my darlings, to my humble chateau. Please make yourself very comfortable. Relax your mind and release your imagination to me. I will bring you a story to entrance and entertain. Perhaps a frightening one. Perhaps a steampunk. Perhaps a bit of mythology. Anyway, sit back, enjoy, and subscribe to me. The Officer Sarah Barkley Chronicles, Part 8, by Barkles 52. Why was there a photograph of Michelle standing there with me? This made no sense. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I'm not sure if it was shock or utter confusion my dad saw in my eyes. But as soon as he locked eyes with mine, he knew I'd figured it out. How about we go sit down upstairs and talk, Sarah? I didn't want to sit down. I felt a whirlwind of different emotions rushing through my body, and I began to feel dizzy. I grabbed onto the old wooden stair railing and caught my balance. What the hell is going on, Dad? Sarah, let's just sit down and talk. I did not want to go sit down, but my body gave me no choice. We went upstairs and I sat on the couch. My dad walked into the kitchen and I heard pop. He walked back out with a bottle of Merlot in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. He sat down and poured each of us a glass. This was always your mom's favorite one, he said with a shaky tone. I looked up at him and saw he had a tear rolling down his cheek, past his mouth and dripped into his hand. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I asked, Dad, why do you have that photograph? He took a long sip of his glass of wine and began his explanation. Oh, where do I even begin? I met Michelle many years ago, only a couple of months after your mom passed. I was on duty and got a call for service in the park. Michelle had, she found something there. I stopped to him. I spoke with Michelle's grandmother, Rose, and she told me about Michelle's gift. My dad's eyebrows raised and he nodded his head. So you know. Well, Michelle sensed that there was a young girl buried in the park. Sure enough, there was. We were all so impressed with her gift, we began using her for help in our unsolved cases. Michelle and I got to spend a lot of time together working those cases, and we became very good friends. One thing led to another, and we became romantically involved. My dad glanced down and shook his head. I was so happy. And yet I was so guilty and ashamed for being happy so soon after your mother passed. We agreed it would be best not to tell anyone about us. Whenever we wanted some normalcy, we took you kids to the amusement park in the city, and we just told you we were friends. That's where the photograph was taken. Why didn't you tell me all of this when I started asking you about Patch Lane and about Michelle Klein? My tone grew louder as I began to become angry that my dad, my best friend, lied to me. I didn't lie, Sarah. I told you I'd been to Patch Lane for that ATF raid, which was true. I'd been there before I ever met Michelle. I just left out the fact that I'd been there additional times. He paused, then continued. And you never actually asked me about Michelle. You were here talking to Tim about her. When I heard you say her name, my heart stopped. I thought she'd died 20 years ago. And that's the God's honest truth. First your mom, then Michelle. I kind of gave up hope after I lost Michelle. Well, at least when I thought I had lost her. When you asked me about the tenants in that house, I just did my best to describe her, but like I said, she had a reputation around town. And she wasn't the kind of girl our family and friends would want me seeing. Of course, the reputation was entirely unfounded, and I just wished I could have helped her out of it. I could feel the anger stirring inside my gut. How the hell can you say that wasn't lying to me? You're right. By omitting the truth, I lied. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I didn't tell you when you were little because of how soon your mom had passed. You barely even understood what death was back then. And as time went on, there was no need to bring up the past. So then what did happen to Michelle, Dad? Moving into that house was a horrible mistake for her. That house was haunted by its past and its present. Her gift became more of a curse, and I always worried it would be her downfall. She knew she was destined to die in that house. Nobody should ever have to experience what she did. When she found all of the guns in that hidden tunnel, and in that room, she called me immediately. She wanted to report it to the police, but I remembered what happened last time that happened. There was a mole in the department, and they gave Joseph a heads up before the ATF raid, so he had time to get out of there. He eventually just found new hidden root cellars and tunnels and rooms to hide his stuff in all over that farmland. I gave her the phone number of a friend of mine in ATF, and I'm not sure what happened after that, but somehow she ended up in witness protection. And Tim? Did he know all of this and lie to me too? I was actually screaming by this point. What? Tim? Oh, God, no, he didn't know anything. He's a straight arrow, Sarah, you know that. He's there when you need him, follows the rules, and never sticks his nose where it shouldn't be. He still doesn't know any of this. I could feel the smoke pouring from my ears. I chugged the rest of my wine and stormed out the door. My dad began to call for me to wait, but I kept going. I felt so hurt, so betrayed that he lied to me after all of these years. I sped home and immediately opened a new bottle of Riesling. I opted for a white this time because it was in the mood for chugging, not sipping. I didn't know how to cope with this stress, but I knew how to drink. I quickly emailed Sergeant Oakley and told him I was going to use some unscheduled vacation time because of some personal family matters I had to deal with. Sergeant Oakley may be tough, but he's a firm believer that if you aren't 100% mentally at work, then you need to take a vacation day because you're only putting your life and coworkers' lives at risk by being there. I grabbed my glass of Riesling and went into the bathroom to draw a bath. I ran the water, added some bubbles, and tested the water with my right toe first. Perfect. I stripped down and slid into the tub, closing my eyes as I slid under the water. I could hear the rain outside my bedroom window, beating down rhythmically. It had been raining here for a few days now. And while I hated the flooding and the horror that comes with it, I loved the sound of rain. Shit, I just remembered that I promised Rose I'd go back and see her tonight. I leaned over the tub and texted Jim to swing by. I figured I could ask him to return her mug and let her know I'd be back in a few days. He said he would stop by after roll call. I hopped out of the tub, put on my favorite comfiest sweatpants, and curled up on the couch with Haley. I began to feel like she was the only one I could truly trust and who hadn't betrayed me. I heard a knock at the door and jumped off my couch to let Tim in. I opened the door and was startled when it wasn't Tim standing there. There was a girl about my age standing in front of me. She had long blonde hair, and I must admit she was very pretty. She looked straight at me and said, "Sarah Barkley?" I was a bit on edge, so I hesitantly answered, yes? Hi. I know you don't know me, but I'm Samantha. You were working on a case involving my mother. Michelle Klein? I scooped my jaw off the floor and said the first words I could get out. Oh, hi. Thankfully, Samantha didn't let my awkwardness interrupt her. She continued, I'm here because I think there's something you need to know. I finally could formulate a real sentence and offered her to come inside. She accepted, and I asked, well, what am I supposed to know? When the marshal spoke to my brother and I, they said the reason our mother came out from hiding was because she found out my brother had brain cancer and was dying. I responded, yes, that's true. They told me the same thing. Yeah, that's the problem. I was confused. My brother doesn't have brain cancer. He's perfectly fine. He never had cancer. He doesn't even take medication for anything. He's perfectly healthy. My mind began to race. Who said that he had cancer? Did Michelle tell the marshals, or did they tell her? Why? Who would lie about that? I verbalized some of my questions. Do you know who told her that he had brain cancer? Yes, well, kind of. The marshals told me that they were the ones who told her because they received notification. They said they constantly kept check on my brother and I to make sure we weren't in any danger. When I asked them for specifics, they said they would have to go back and check their client files and check who signed off on the supplemental report. When they went to check, though, it was gone. My gut tells me I can't trust the two marshals I spoke to. But now I don't know who falsely notified them my brother had cancer. I began to realize somebody intentionally lured Michelle out of hiding and knew that if Joseph Mueller saw her, he would kill her. Listen, Samantha, I absolutely want to look into this further, but I just used some vacation time and took off the next few days. I'm happy to help you next week, though. Samantha nodded her head in disappointment. I know. I'm sorry I even bothered you at home. I got your address from your chief. I was honestly pretty surprised he gave it out, but he said you wouldn't mind me stopping by. Goddamn Chief Fox. No surprise there. Samantha continued. I just wanted to offer my help, though. I appreciated the offer and asked, Thank you. How can I get a hold of you if I need you? Samantha gave me her phone number and her hotel address where she'd been staying in town. I reassured her, I'll look into this, I promise, and I will let you know what I find. I just remembered about Rose's cup that I still had. Oh, and I have your great-grandmother's coffee mug. Long story, but if you see her while you're in town, can you give this back to her? Samantha looked at me confused and asked, Which great-grandmother are you referring to? Rose, your mom's grandma. She used to live with when you were little? Samantha looked like she just saw a ghost and told me, Officer Barkley, Grandma Rose passed away a few years ago. I am going to need more than just one vacation day. I'll update all of you when I return to work. I was starting to question my own sanity. There was no way I was sitting in that cabin talking to a ghost. I even held the coffee mug in my hand to prove it. There was no polite way of asking the question I had pounding in my mind like a hammer on a nail. I decided to just ask Samantha. Well, are you sure your grandma's dead? I couldn't tell if Samantha was offended or just surprised by the question. She thought about it for a moment and said, Well, yeah, I think so. Why would my aunt lie to me about that? That was her mother. I asked for clarification. So this aunt of yours would be your mother's aunt too? So she's actually your great-aunt? Samantha nodded her head in agreement. Yes, I just never called her or thought of her as a great-aunt since she's pretty young because of how old my mom was when she had me. I pressed her for more details. Do you remember exactly what your aunt told you? Samantha's glance moved to the upper right of the room while she was deep in thought. Her eyes came back down and met mine as she answered. Yeah, I remember when she got the phone call. She said it was the police department, and they'd notified her that Grandma Rose had passed. My aunt was so upset because she had asked for the body and what next steps she could take. They told her that because there was no family left in the area, it took a long time to contact the next of kin, at which point Grandma Rose had already been cremated. It broke my aunt's heart. It seemed like every time she tried to call the station or ask questions, they told her everything was gone and there was no need for her to come up for anything. I began to wonder if the mole had something to do with this. Oh, Samantha, I don't know what's going on here, but your Grandma Rose is very much still alive. Samantha began to tear up, and before she broke down, I stopped her and said, Here, let me write down the address for you, and you can go see for yourself. She will be so much happier that you bring this mug back than me. I wrote down the address and handed the mug to Samantha, and the puzzle pieces began coming together. What if the mole in the department is behind all this? Why? I thought about all of the phone complications Rose was having and blaming Samuel for them. Why didn't Rose try to call any of her family? Did she ever try? Did someone cross her phone wires so that any outgoing calls would be screened first? If this is the case, it had to be related to whoever has the ability to make all those 911 hang-ups and knows the phone system inside and out. I walked into my kitchen to grab another glass of wine and realized there's only one thing that could calm my mind more than wine: my Aunt Maggie. I decided to take a weekend getaway to Aunt Maggie's. She'd been there for me all my life, and if anyone could help me sort through all of this, it was her. I always feel better after speaking with her and spending time on her secluded farm. She just has a way of putting things into perspective between her classic farmhouse, vibrant garden, acres of nothing but fields. It's the perfect cocktail for relaxation. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. The sweet voice I know so well answered the phone with an almost singing greeting. Hello? Hi, Aunt Maggie. Hi, honey, how are you? Can I come spend the weekend with you? I need a mini vacay right now. Sure, you know you're always welcome in my home. Thank you so much. Do you mind if I bring Haley with me? Haley? Who's Haley? Is this a new friend? No, it's my cat I recently adopted. Oh, I didn't know you got a cat. Your dad didn't mention your cat when we last spoke. I'm looking forward to meeting her. Drive safely and I'll see you soon. I grabbed some clean clothes from the closet and my toiletries from the bathroom. Packing took about 10 minutes. Then I collected Haley's food, bowls, bed, litter box, and supplies. It took me longer to pack her stuff than mine. Once I had everything ready, I loaded the bags into the car, grabbed Haley, put her in her new carrier, and headed for Aunt Maggie's. I immediately began to feel my stress level decline as I pulled out of my driveway. After a short drive, I arrived at Aunt Maggie's home. It was a beautiful, large 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch. She took great pride in her home and spent countless hours tending to the colorful gardens and flower beds that lined the front, walk, and driveway. An avid gardener and home cook, her vegetable beds were green and luscious. Clearly, all the recent rain had helped her crops. Since I arrived later in the day, I was surprised to see her sitting on the front porch, working a crossword puzzle and enjoying a cool glass of lemonade. I knew she was waiting for me to arrive, and that made me feel so loved. Once she saw me, she stood up, placed her crossword book in a basket beside the front door, and walked down the front steps to meet me. It was so nice to see her, and I knew Haley was ready to get out of her carrier. She had been meowing for the last 15 minutes of the ride. I guess she was afraid of the unknown. I can certainly relate to that. Sarah, how was your trip? It was good. No traffic, which was nice. I think I made the drive just between storms, too. That's good. I was worried you'd have to take an alternate route with all of the storm damage in the area. Then I remembered just how bad the storm damage was in some of the areas. Aunt Maggie's place luckily seemed to have escaped the brunt of the storm. Did you have any storm damage? It looks like you got pretty lucky. Oh, I'm fine. There was a little water in the basement and garage, but nothing that I couldn't handle. It sounds like your new friend would like to get out of the car. So how about we take her inside and I'll make you dinner? I have stuffed chicken breasts in the oven and green beans on the stove. As I walked through the front door, I could smell the chicken, the freshly baked bread resting on the kitchen island, and the faint traces of homemade peach pie. Oh, how wonderful it was to be here. It reminded me of all the times I would stay with Aunt Maggie as a young child when my dad was working double shifts. Sometimes I really miss those days. Sarah, do you mind setting the table? I just need to pull the chicken out of the oven and rinse the green beans. Then everything should be ready to eat. Sure, I can handle that. Are the dishes still in the same cupboard? Yes, center section, lower shelf. The silverware is in the drawer beside the refrigerator. I immediately set the table and helped Aunt Maggie carry the heavy pots to the table. She really made a lot of food for just the two of us. But I guess after making such large meals for so many years, she couldn't break the habit. We sat and began to load our plates. Everything smelled delicious and tasted incredible. I didn't realize until the first bite how much I missed my aunt's cooking. Everything's wonderful. I forgot how amazing your stuffed chicken breasts taste. Oh, well, thank you, but I can't take all the credit. The butcher shop always gives me the best cuts of meat and breasts. That makes the biggest difference when you're cooking. We enjoyed dinner, and I ate so much food I could hardly move. I helped Aunt Maggie clear the table and load the dishwasher and put away the leftovers. Then we retired to the front porch to enjoy a glass of Riesling and the cool evening air. So, how's work? Are you busy? Oh, you have no idea. Between all the storm damage calls and the murder case I caught last week, things have been crazy. I'll be very happy once things return to normal and it finally stops raining. Oh, are you on that Patch Lane murder case I saw on the news? I'm glad you caught the guy. That jerk was no good from the word go. I guess his luck finally ran out. Since Aunt Maggie had grown up and lived in the area years ago, I thought maybe she might be able to share some details about the Patch Lane farm. Did you know Joseph Mueller? Yes, I did. Well, sort of. I never met him, but he used to call the insurance company where I worked all the time to report property damages on the farm. We handled and processed the insurance claim for his farm insurance provider, since they didn't have a local office in the area. They found it was more feasible to sub out all the claim work. He always seemed to have a problem with his property, especially after a storm or renovation project. One time he called and reported that someone had dug up one of his fields and he lost a $10,000 crop of corn. We didn't handle crop damage claims, but he wouldn't stop calling. He claimed that his property damaged as well, so the firm sent a field technician to investigate. Turns out he had dug up the field himself and had accidentally hit an unmarked utility line that sparked and partially burned the field. He was extremely lucky that the utility company didn't press charges or sue him for the repairing costs. We had a tough supervisor at the time, and he finally intervened and convinced the insurance company to terminate his coverage based on the fraudulent claim. My aunt went on to tell me that Joseph had a girlfriend working at the insurance firm, and that she'd tried to reinstate his coverage without a supervisor's authorization, but was fired when they discovered the policy change. Aunt Maggie had piqued my interest. It was amazing to me that she knew of all of this. Do you remember her name? Yes, I do. Her name was Betty Ann, but everyone called her Beat. I think her married name was Smith or Smooth or something like that. I'm not sure if she changed it after the divorce. I lost track of her after she left the company. How ironic. Chief's Fox secretary was named Betty Ann, and he called her Beatbox. I couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny? Aunt Maggie asked. Well, Chief Fox secretary is named Betty Ann, and sometimes he will call her Beatbox. We always laugh about it since we didn't think that Chief Fox knew what a beatbox was. Oh, wait a minute. I bet your beatbox is the same one I worked with all those years ago. There can't be too many women in town called Beat. If it's the same person, she'd be close to my age or maybe a few years older than I am. I haven't seen her in years, but she used to have the prettiest chestnut brown hair. She always wore it in an old updo style with a black ribbon tied around it. She always thought she looked like a movie starlet, but if you ask me, she looked more like a cartoon character. I couldn't believe it. The chief's secretary had the same hairstyle. It had to be the same person. I pulled out my phone and began scrolling through my photos from our last department holiday. I knew I had a photo of her, and I wanted to see if Aunt Maggie recognized her. I found one and enlarged the portion with Beatbox. Does this look like her? Aunt Maggie studied the photo and said, Yes, that's her. She's gained a lot of weight, and you can tell she colors her hair, but that looks like her. I began to wonder and talk to myself out loud. How could Chief Fox not have known this? Why would he hire her then? To my surprise, Aunt Maggie actually responded to my rhetorical question. Well, I can't say for certain, but I wouldn't be surprised if Beat was made to sign a confidentiality agreement not to disclose her termination. Plus, it was much easier back then to simply leave things off your resume. Now you can't get away with that because of all the technology and ways to check. My mind began to race. Could Beatbox be the mole in the department? Was Chief aware of it, or, heaven forbid, could he be part of the leak? Chief was a straight shooter. Granted, a sexist straight shooter, but nonetheless, he was a fervent supporter of the justice system. So I really didn't think he could be involved, but I had to be sure. People's lives were at stake. We stayed outside just long enough to capture the sunset. Aunt Maggie and I then moved inside and reclined on the sofa. She always watched the nightly news at 10 p.m., so I knew she wouldn't want to miss it. I didn't want to worry her about Beatbox, so I changed the conversation to a lighter topic. Haley. That wonderful little purr monster had won my aunt's heart and seemed totally at home nestled on my aunt's wingback chair. Oh, your little friend is an angel. I'm so glad you have her to keep you company. She is. I never knew I could love her as much as I do. I wasn't looking for a cat, but now I can't imagine life without her. I glanced at the mantel clock, and it was almost time for the nightly news. I decided to refill our wine glasses and grab some popcorn from the kitchen. Aunt Maggie loved popcorn, so I knew she would enjoy sharing a bowl with me. I settled on the couch and covered my legs with the throw. I didn't have to call Haley. She leaped from the back of the chair and landed squarely on my lap. I swear this cat has blanket radar. Aunt Maggie laughed and commented on Haley's agility. Clearly her paw felt much better and was healing. The news began promptly at 10, and the lead-off story was no shocker. More rain in the forecast. Aunt Maggie was the first to comment. I swear if it rains much more, I'll have to build an ark. I agreed and realized that I was probably in for a rough return to work. We would probably be inundated with calls for flooded basements, trapped elderlies, and stupid motorist calls for individuals who believed their vehicles could double as boats when the water rose too high for driving. Seriously, the amount of money the department spends rescuing these people could be better used for new gear and additional officers. The next story talked about the weather disruption of the local baseball league game schedule and landslides in the local community. Apparently, the league supervisors were discussing a shortened season and wanted public feedback at the next meeting. The heavy rains had caused local hillsides to collapse and created lengthy traffic detours along busy highways. After a short commercial break, the news anchor continued with the top stories. To my surprise, it was an update to the Patch Lane murder case. Earlier today, accused murderer Joseph Mueller posted bail of $1 million and walked out of the local county jail. His trial is set to begin sometime in early 2019. What the hell? That bastard was supposed to be remanded until trial based on flight risk. Who posted the bail, and what was the judge thinking? I immediately texted Tim. Did you see that Mueller posted bail? Instead of texting, Tim was calling me. Listen, I know you're on vacation, but we have a huge problem. Mueller flew the coop, and the marshals are worried he's after you. They're looking for him now, but there's no telling where he's gone. They want your location so they can send backup. This guy has a score to settle with you. Tim, why did the judge give him bail? This is a capital murder case. Apparently, his lawyer argued that he had advanced prostate cancer and required pain management and chemotherapy that cannot be provided in prison. The judge bought the argument and set bail at $1 million. No one thought he'd be able to post it, but within 30 minutes he was walking out the door. Who posted the bail? Well, that's another problem. The paperwork is missing and the camera above the bail office was not functioning. We have no visual of who posted that bail. If you're asking me, it looks like Mr. Mueller had some help. The marshals were at the station all day following up on cases, and it seems that log records are not correct and key pieces of evidence are missing from the lockup. Needless to say, it was a real shitstorm, and Chief is not happy. The suits were all over his ass. They're threatening to pull rank and ask the state attorney general to intervene. Barkley, I think we have a mole in the department, and I'm worried about you. Tim, I have to go. It looks like the marshals are calling me. Barkley, be careful. Watch your back. He didn't tell me anything I didn't already know. I answered the incoming call, and it was one of the marshals I'd met during the investigation. Barkley, we need to meet. Now. What is your location? Mueller's in the wind, and we have no solid leads to his whereabouts. I'm visiting family 1 county over. Can I meet you? No, we will come to you. Stay at your location. We will be there in 20 minutes. True to his word, Marshal Compton and a few of his cavalry arrived within 20 minutes, and it had begun to rain. He rushed to the front door, and Aunt Maggie left him inside. Clearly, she was worried about me. Hi, I'm Maggie, Sarah's aunt. Hello, ma'am. I'm Marshal Compton at the U.S. Marshals. I'm here to talk with Officer Barkley. As I walked around the corner, Marshal Compton redirected his conversation to me. Is there somewhere we can speak privately? We can talk here in the living room. My aunt can stay, as I believe you'll be interested in some information she shared with me. Protocol dictates that we talk privately, but if you feel her information has a direct bearing on the investigation, we will allow her to stay. Yes, you will want to hear what she has to say. Aunt Maggie offered the marshals a glass of lemonade, and we walked to the living room. We sat down, and the marshals began to talk. We were recently alerted to inconsistencies with the Patch Lane paperwork by the district attorney's office, and began to fear there may be a saboteur in the department. We began to identify individuals with access to evidence and who would be able to alter documentation. Since your department is small, we had a handful of suspects and we began to evaluate each one. Some of those individuals were quickly ruled out. Others remained under investigation until we could clear them. When we were at the station last week, I noticed Chief Secretary, Ms. Rhodes, pull out of the station parking lot in a newer Audi R8. I'm not on the best with cars, but I did remember a lot of the guys drooling over her new car when she got it a year ago. Oh yeah, that car. That's made for someone like 40 years younger than her. I know what you're talking about. What's the significance? The marshal continued. It sparked my curiosity, so I began to suspect there was more to Miss Rhodes. I began to investigate her financials because there is absolutely no way she could afford that car on a police salary. Hell, I can't even afford that car, and my wife's a lawyer. Clearly, she had other income that she's not reporting on her annual tax return. We also took a look at her credit report. The woman has a serious shopping issue. Marshal Compton paused for a moment and then resumed. We have reason to believe that she is somehow involved with the Michelle Klein murder, but we are uncertain as to the extent of her involvement. We are awaiting a court order to dig deeper on the financials. Aunt Maggie then repeated her story of Beat's prior work experience and subsequent dismissal to the marshals. They asked questions. Some that Aunt Maggie could answer, others she couldn't. One lingering question that no one could answer was why Beat would lure Michelle out of witness protection now? It made no sense. As quick as I could finish my thought, I heard a gunshot out the window. So quoth this raven. Oh, my darlings, Barkles is writing a book, and you can tell she is so good at it. So much went on in this episode, so much to process. Enjoy it. Hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come back and see me. If you leave a comment, I'll do my best to respond. Bye-bye, my darlings.